Hey, you're getting ready for the summer's just about here. Nice weather. What am I going to do? Go to Parks Casino, the number one casino in Penn. Impressive collection of restaurants I keep telling you about. The Parks Grill Steakhouse, Astro Pub and Open Air Beer Garden, Bamboo Noodle House, Chicky and Pete's. You can't go wrong with Chicky and Pete's. All right there at Parks Casino, plus a state-of-the-art sports book, the 360 bar with live bands, comedy, and headline entertainment at the Excite Center. Visit parkscasino.com for all the details. Time now for the headlines from Smerconish.com, the newsletter. TC voting yesterday, 12,469 votes cast. Will the January 6 hearings be consequential? 58.2 to 41.8 people said yes. What do you think now? Because you would think that the most consequential evidence was presented as part of that summary last night in prime time, right? You don't hold back. I mean, you don't want to reveal your total hand, but you got to start that presentation when you're in prime time with a bang. Did they do it? I think the answer to that question depends on what you thought going in and whether you were watching. I believe it's a compelling narrative. That it's a compelling story of how January 6th was not spontaneous, not left to chance. It was not organic. It was all part of a bigger plan, and the quarterback was Donald Trump. I've been over that ground countless times here on POTUS and on CNN. Because I've been paying attention, nothing surprised me last night. Now, was there a grab him by the lapel moment last night? I remind you that CBS News' Robert Costa asked the committee vice chair, Wyoming Representative Liz Cheney, in advance of last night, are you confident that what you have found as a committee will somehow grab the American people by the lapels and say, wake up, you have to pay attention? I am, she said. I didn't see the lapel moment last night. If they have one, I didn't see it. Maybe it's Liz Cheney saying that Donald Trump believed those who wanted to hang Mike Pence had the right idea. I don't know. I'll be able to pin that on him. I'm not minimizing any of it. But I'm also noting that Fox last night carried it but didn't carry it. They carried it as a backdrop just to be dismissive of it and to do it in a way, TC, you noticed this, that people couldn't change the channel.
I mean, I thought as a broadcaster or myself, I use that word loosely. I'm nowhere near them, but I thought that was genius to carry to be for 2 hours to go commercially, which no one does because they didn't want to give anyone a chance to change the channel. I thought it was incredible.
Because the minute they would go to commercial, maybe somebody would go over to CNN or ABC because everybody was carrying it.
And maybe they would get hooked. Let me see what they're really saying over there. But no. They went commercial free. It was amazing.
I was going to do the follow-up, which is, and so did the needle get moved last night? But I'm doing January 6th, but from a different angle.
Okay.
We spoke yesterday about the Washington Commanders football coach, the defensive coordinator, Jack Del Rio, and how this football coach referred to January 6th as a dust-up. Yesterday, we had fun with the old muzzled meter. I think I'm going to bring that back, by the way.
I mean,
that was fun.
And what are we going to do? Like gather different things and then we have 3 or 4?
Yeah, every once in a while.
Or maybe just drop in one every once in a while.
Yeah. So he said January 6th was a dust-up, and like I knew this was going to happen. I just didn't know who would be calling for his reprimand. It's the head of the NAACP, Derek Johnson. He released a statement. He says Del Rio's comment cost him his job. That is today's survey question at Smerconish.com. Should he be reprimanded? Should he be, how did we word it? Should he resign or be fired for calling January 6th a dust-up? My view, no is the answer. I believe that January 6th was the real deal, that it really threatened our democracy. But the people have a right to express an opinion, and a football coach shouldn't be reprimanded for calling it a dust-up. If it were a public school teacher, I'd have a different view. So that's January 6th. I'm not minimizing it. I'm all over it in today's program. But I don't want to say there's bigger news, but there are 2 stories at Smerconish.com today that are leading our website and both deal with Uvalde, and they are really significant. In fact, I would caption this part of our conversation hands-free for reasons I'll now explain. The first story is from the New York Times, page 1 today, by J. David Goodman. Heavily armed officers delayed confronting a gunman in Uvalde, Texas for more than an hour, even though supervisors at the scene had been told that some trapped with him in 2 elementary school classrooms needed medical treatment. A new review of video footage and other material shows. Instead, the documents show they waited for protective equipment to lower the risk to law enforcement officer. I mean, the portrayal in the Times here is some real Kenny Rogers, coward of the county kind of stuff. The school district police chief who was leading the response to the May 24th shooting appeared to be agonizing over the length of time it was taking to secure the shields that would help protect officers. Those kids had no shields. The chief, Pete Arredondo, and others at the scene became aware that not everyone inside the classroom was already dead, the document showed, including a report from a school district police officer whose wife, a teacher, had spoken to him by phone from one of the classrooms to say she'd been shot. Okay, so that's the New York Times saying, hey, they knew kids were alive and they were waiting for shields before they would go in. Okay, story number 1. Now, story number 2, the chief speaks. The Texas Tribune has the first on-the-record account by Chief Arredondo of his perspective of what went on. And now I come back to hands-free. I'm not going to read it all to you. It's posted at Smerconish.com. There's not a paywall. You have to read this story. Here are what I consider to be the most salient aspects. Arredondo has faced death threats. News crews have camped outside his home, forcing him to go into hiding. He's been called cowardly and incompetent. Neither accusation, he says, is fair. Quote, not a single responding officer ever hesitated, even for a moment, to put themselves at risk to save the children. Wow. How do you square that with what I just told you about the New York Times? We responded to the information that we had and had to adjust to whatever we faced. Our objective was to save as many lives as we could, and the extraction of the students from the classrooms by all that were involved saved for 500. Oh my God, is the logic here? Well, 500 got out. That's not bad. 19 died, 500 got out. 19 was the final number, right? Fact check me. Arredondo's explanations don't fully address the questions that have been raised. Okay. Then his lawyer speaks, said that the criticisms don't reflect the realities of the police when they're under fire. Uvalde is small, blah, blah, blah. His client ran straight toward danger, armed with 29 years of law enforcement experience and a Glock 22 handgun with no body armor and no second thoughts. The chief committed to stop the shooter or die trying. Correct me.
No, you're correct.
Okay.
19 children and
2 teachers. Yeah. One of Arredondo's, this is the key part. One of Arredondo's most consequential decisions was immediate. Within seconds of arriving at the northeast entrance of Robb Elementary at about 11:35 a.m., he left his police and campus radios outside the school. To Arredondo, the choice was logical. An armed killer was loose on the campus of the elementary school. Every second mattered. He wanted both hands free to hold his gun, ready to aim and fire quickly and accurately if he encountered the gunman. Well, what it means is that decision for the remainder of the ordeal left him not in police contact with the scores of other officers from at least 5 agencies who are now on the scene. It's also acknowledged that the chief and other officers heard great rounds being fired, meaning after the initial barrage, and didn't go in. He says that they didn't go in because the classroom door was reinforced with a hefty steel jab, J-A-M-B, designed to keep an attacker on the outside from forcing their way in, but with the gunman inside the room, that took away officers' abilities to immediately kick in the door. Arredondo believed that the situation changed from an active shooter barricaded himself in. That we knew before, but because he didn't have his radio, he wasn't aware of the 911 calls that were being made by the kids. The Texas Department of Public Safety officials and news outlets have reported that the shooter fired his gun at least 2 more times as police waited in the hallway. But he is in the hallway, the chief, and he's not in contact with other officers who are there. And then something else. Listen to this. Because he's out of touch, Arredondo assumed that some other officer or official had taken control of the larger response. He took on the role of a frontline responder. He said he never considered himself the scene's incident commander, and that he did not give any instruction that police should not attempt to breach the building. So he's the top guy. He's there quickly on the scene. He leaves behind his radio. Now he's out of touch. They go into a holding pattern. And according to the New York Times, they are waiting for shields to arrive, even though the kids are on the other side of that door and they don't have shields. Bottom line is the chief may have spoken, but he hasn't helped himself. You got to read the stories, both of them, New York Times and the story from the Texas Tribune. They are leading Smerconish.com. And of course, I've got all the January 6th coverage as well. It's a busy news day and there's a lot to digest. Maybe we shouldn't be surprised. Pew Research, new data published at Smerconish.com. Just 20% say they trust the government in Washington to do the right thing just about always or almost all of the time. A sentiment that, this is interesting, hasn't really changed since W's time in office. TC, you read the Pew Research data. What struck you as most significant?
What struck me as most significant, because I'm always thinking, who would want to go into politics now? That's my take on things. Why anyone watching this want to go into politics? And they said that I think it's 65% of the people surveyed thought that the only reason people go into politics was for their own edification, for their own good, for advancing themselves, not for the good of everybody else. So I thought that was sort of an interesting statistic.
Only 21%.
Only
21% say they run for office in order to serve their communities. Right. Distressing.
Right.
Probably true.
Right.
Probably true.
Right.
You remember with all the mishigas about counting the ballots in Pennsylvania, if they don't have a date on the outside of the envelope, do they get counted? The state court says one thing, then the Third Circuit, a federal court, said another thing, blah, 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 blah. It's unresolved by the Supreme Court of the United States. The United States Supreme Court has declined for now to wade into the debate over whether undated mail ballots should be counted in Pennsylvania elections, a fight that could decide whether thousands of votes are accepted in future elections that would otherwise have been thrown out. It's got to get resolved between now and the presidential election. Got to get resolved between now and the presidential election. Otherwise, it's going to be a blank show in Philadelphia again. Hey, John Myers, the Sacramento bureau chief for the LA Times, is a really good radio guest. How did we establish a relationship with him? We're lucky to have him.
We're very lucky to have him.
I mean, anytime there's a political issue in California, he's always there and willing, and we are grateful.
I think what happens with some of these political reporters is they come on once and they realize that you're a good interviewer and you're interested.
You're nice.
Interested. Well, no, and then they
Greg Bluestein at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. We have a stable of our go-tos,
and we're very, very grateful.
So I recommend today from the LA Times. I'm a big LA Times fan. I'm a big California fan. Can we acknowledge
California, London? Where
No.
settle?
No. Don't do that to me. Can we acknowledge
LA or Mayfair?
Can we acknowledge our West Coast base of support?
Oh, yes.
Look at the callers from California. It's morning drive in California.
Even on a normal day, but on a day like Wednesday when it was the day after, or Tuesday when it was the day of their primary, and you solicited calls.
Yeah.
Filled up immediately.
It was fabulous.
Immediately.
Anyway, he has a great analysis talking about how it's now 10 years on, the top two or jungle primary, and he addresses the question of, have we really been able to attract pragmatic candidates to the fray? Because that was the whole purpose. That was one of the reasons that Governor Schwarzenegger was on board with this whole idea. In fact, it would be fun to talk to Arnold, with whom I have not spoken in a long time, to see what does he say 10 years on about the jungle primary. But read the John Myers assessment from the LA Times. It's at Smerconish.com today. How about this from Michigan? FBI agents arrested Republican gubernatorial candidate Ryan Kelly on misdemeanor charges related to January 6, injecting a new round of turmoil into Michigan's upcoming primary election. TC, he's not the Republican candidate. He's a Republican candidate.
Correct. Evidently, there's a large field of Republican candidates who want to take on the governor in the fall.
Okay. Love this from the Deseret newspaper in Utah. Evan McMullin running as an independent, the Democratic Party stood down. And so it's an independent Democratic support who is now running for the United States Senate from the great state of Utah. This month's Republican primary election will determine which of three candidates will face independent Evan McMullin in the race for the U.S. Senate in November. The polls say it's neck and neck. I mean, this is part of that strategy that says if we only had a few legitimate independent candidates who were in the United States Senate, they'd hold the balance of power. And Evan McMullin may be the guy, the Fulcrum Project. That's what it's called. He really wowed this audience when he was on the program recently. So I'm keeping my eye on his race. That story is posted at Smerconish.com. Sadly, gas prices hit a national average of $5 per gallon. The average price of gallon gas nationwide exceeds $5, crossing that milestone. Terrible for summer travel in terms of what it's going to take to fill up your tank.
$5 is looking pretty good to me with our diesel.
Right. If you're driving a diesel to Massachusetts and getting bogged down in traffic in Connecticut, you are in trouble.
I'm swearing the entire again. Another reason to like I-95 in Connecticut.
Another travel story. You remember when then President Trump ordered a new Air Force One?
Yes.
Now the paint job that he ordered is at issue because apparently the color combo that he wanted could subject the aircraft to excessive heating.
Oh, it's darker, the darker blue.
Trump in 2019 unveiled the color scheme for two new Air Force One fleet jets being converted by Boeing, changing the baby blue on the underside of the jet to a dark blue and red design, which he said was more patriotic. Here's the question.
Wow.
Does he ever get to fly in that plane again?
Well, that is the big question.
Felicia Sonmez terminated by the Washington Post. We talked about some of that. Dave Weigel, that whole issue yesterday, which was good fodder for conversation. Good story about, I'm intrigued by this whole work from home. Are people ever going back? Good analysis in the Wall Street Journal. That's at Smerconish.com today as well. The Nancy Reagan stamp has prompted backlash from the LGBTQ plus. Do I now need to say plus at the end of that?
You don't need to. Whatever it is that makes you comfortable, Michael. You are an ally. So you're fine.
Members of that. Hey, I'm for everybody. Live and let live. We're here for a short time. Let's get along.
That's called an ally. Members
of the LGBTQ plus community calling a new stamp featuring former First Lady Nancy Reagan a slap in the face as it was unveiled at the beginning of Pride Month because of the Reagan administration's role in the AIDS crisis back in the 1980s. And finally, the Live Golf controversy. Here's the wrap up. The PGA has suspended the 17 members who are competing in the inaugural Live Golf International Series. It was announced on Thursday. Players who resigned their membership before starting the Live Golf event being held outside of London that began Thursday, no longer eligible to compete in tour events in the President's Cup. So that controversy I think Alan with me on CNN tomorrow.
A great guest. Good.
He wrote the biography of
he's the one that
Phil
broke
Mickelson.
The whole story.
Yeah.
Really.
About Phil's gambling and
the Saudis because of what Phil said. So that's a perfect guest.
So today's survey question at Smerconish.com. Should Washington Commanders football coach Jack Del Rio resign or be fired for calling January 6th a dust-up? I listened yesterday to the latest installment of TC After Dark.
Hey.
It was a poetry reading.
Did you listen to it? Did you like it?
I did.
It's uplifting, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's fun.
I loved when you read the poem about the man from Nantucket. That was really good. There was a lot of highbrow stuff there.
All right. Time check. Gotta go.
Ladies and gentlemen, I shall be on CNN tomorrow at 9 a.m. Philly time, God willing, and all things being equal, as the late, great Sid Mark would have said. Please register for Smerconish.com, the newsletter. Continue to watch, continue to listen. Have a wonderful weekend.